Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day and help us to gain a blessing out of what is being brought before us here today. We ask in thy name. Amen.
John 18, verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out. And so I stopped there and first said, went out from where? And John doesn't tell us where this was, but where do you think it was?
From the upper room.
I think so. The upper room is not all that far from the Temple Mount, as I recall.
There's one over here for
And so said they went out with his disciples over the brook Kidron. It's down the hill from the Temple Mount into the Kidron Valley, up the hill to the Garden of Gethsemane at the top of the Mount of Olives. I don't know if you can picture this or not. Elaine, give us a word picture. We walked it from the temple to the Mount of Olives. Give us a word picture.
Lots of trees in this area. There's a kind of a garden area. There was some fencing there.
Talking about the Garden of Gethsemane.
We were in what is believed to be the upper room. It really, there's a reason why Jerusalem is the only capital city in the world that does not have an international airport. The reason is because it is so hilly. There isn't enough flat land to make what's really needed for international airflight. And it is just like this. And the valley, of course, is here, and Jerusalem is here, and the Garden of Gethsemane, and the Mount is there.
How big was the upper room?
Not as big as this room.
So it was
Just a little bigger than the room we met in last week, or last time upstairs.
Okay.
Not large. And as I recall, it's not all that far from the Temple Mount. A little ways down this way and over this way, and then you're at the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is humongous. I stood by some and took some pictures, and I looked like a mouse next to one of those big stone blocks.
Oh, I remember that picture.
Yeah, I mean, they're just huge, and how the Temple Mount was built like that. And there's no mortar between those big things. It's quite amazing. And so that also helps me understand why Jesus said there would not be one stone left upon another, because they weren't glued together. And so, yeah, they were huge. So the Temple Mount, and then it is on a mountain. It's on Mount Zion, to be exact, which is not like Mount Everest or anything like that, of course. For Israel, I guess it's a pretty good mountain, but it's all hills. From Jerusalem, you go downhill through just mountains of desert, literally, to get to Jericho. But from the Temple Mount, as I recall, we went down a bunch of steps, and then you got down to the bottom, and there's a few steps that, by tradition, says that these are the steps where Jesus walked.
And we know that's true because it's bedrock. There are what we call traditions, and then there are things that are factual. And the tradition things is man-made conversation with next generation. But the steps he's talking about is bedrock, so Jesus walked there. Bedrock does not.
And so then you continue to go down the valley, and there's a brook, a little brook, mostly dry, kind of like Arizona's rivers. They're all sand and rock until it rains, and then they're wet for a little while. Yeah, kind of the same. And then from there you can go up a rather narrow road. It was paved, and about a third of the way up on the left as you're going up was the Garden of Gethsemane. Very old olive trees were there. We went in, everybody went off by themselves and knelt and prayed. I walked today where Jesus walked. And felt him close, yes. It was really a very moving type of thing. And then you can walk on up the top of Mount of Olives and overlook the city of Jerusalem, and you can see the temple, well, what used to be the temple, which is now a mosque, the gold dome.
Where Jesus said he would have gathered them up as a hen gathers her chicks, but they would not.
Yep, yes.
In that area where Jesus prayed.
So anyway, so that's kind of what I look at as the setting for John 18. His disciples went over the brook Kidron, where there was a garden, and he's talking about the Garden of Gethsemane, which he and his disciples entered. And Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. I think that's significant. It's not far from the temple. Jesus and the disciples often went there. For olives? No.
Solitude and prayer.
Solitary prayer, yes. Yeah. But to me, the key word is often. Not once in a while, not once a month, not once a week. Often. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. So, what does that tell you? Well planned was what I was thinking of exactly. Well planned. So Judas hadn't just drummed this up in the last couple of hours, had he? Why did Jesus tolerate that? What's that?
They came prepared. They had lanterns and torches and weapons. They came prepared, planning to do, to do harm.
They were prepared. It was well planned.
Yeah.
Judas knows where they're going to be too.
And Judas knew where he would be.
Yeah.
But why did Jesus tolerate all of this? He knew what was going on. This ain't no secret to him.
He knew the prophecies that had to be fulfilled as well.
He knew the prophecies had to be fulfilled.
And they talked to his father.
He had talked to his father. What else?
The children saved.
Absolutely. He knew what was going on. He knew what he came to earth to do. And so this is just part of the plan. And so I would assume that Jesus, with his infinite mind in a human body, knew that this was part of the plan. And I think that's why in the Garden of Gethsemane he may have said, Father, take this cup from me. If there's any other way, but if there isn't, I'll do it as we planned. Fair? And there wasn't another way, because there is no other way, no other name under heaven by which we can be saved. The penalty for sin is what? And if Jesus hadn't been our substitute, where would we all be forever? Dead. Dead. Because we can't redeem ourselves. Why? I'm sorry? Because of sin. We cannot. We were not the lawgivers. So it's not for us to have a repair for the law. I mean, only the lawgiver could change its requirements. Would that be accurate? I mean, nobody else could say, I'll die for you. This is my law, but I'll die for you, and that will replace your permanent death. So only the lawgiver himself could change. Only the lawgiver himself could redeem us, but he cannot change his law. He can change the rules regarding it, perhaps, in that he can be our substitute. That's it. Okay? Then Judas, having received this is verse 3, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns, torches, weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, whom are you seeking? Well, wasn't that a dumb question? I don't mean that sacrilegiously. What do you think?
I think he wanted them to think.
Okay. He wanted them to think. Who are you seeking? Everybody knew, didn't they? Who didn't know? Some little kid scampering around in the middle of the night when he should have been home in bed? I don't know. Notice the note that the question Jesus asked about who they were looking for highlights the fact that he was in full control of the situation. Nothing happened that Jesus didn't already expect and know about. Right? So in a sense, he's saying, I know why you're here, but let's just be clear.
It's just like us. A lot of times we'll just flip out a statement, but we really don't know what we're saying, or we want people to think about what we're saying, and they're not.
Mm-hmm. But Jesus knew what he wasn't just throwing out a statement. He
Right.
knew what was all about.
Right.
They answered him and said, Jesus of Nazareth. So Jesus said to them what? I am he. What do you think about that statement, I am he?
Mr. White makes a statement about that.
You have to speak louder, the fans are a bit noisy.
I'm saying Sister White makes a statement about that. When they come for us, we need to identify ourselves the same way.
I am he?
Right? Whoever they're, and they come after us. And they say, we're looking for you, for me. I'm supposed to,
We're here, we're looking for Bob Grimm. Where is he?
I am he.
There you go.
That's what she said we're supposed to say.
Okay. In other words, don't hide it, don't run from it.
That's right.
But humanly speaking, that would be very hard to do.
Yeah, real hard.
That's why humanly speaking, you can't do it. It can't be done. Fair enough?
We can do it with his help.
With his help. Yes, yes. There's more to that statement, I am he. I believe. What else is there?
He identified himself to Moses by saying, I am,
I am.
the great I am.
Yes. I think he used the same phrase on purpose here, I am. So literally right then he was identifying himself as the God Almighty. Now they may not have realized that they weren't looking for God. They were just looking for Jesus. Jesus said to them, I am he. And Judas, who betrayed him, also stood with him. Now when he said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Why? What caused them to fall to the ground?
The power of God.
What?
The power of God.
God had just spoken to them. I am. Whenever the I am came to the mount with Moses and the Israelites, what did they do? When God is present, we can't stand. When Jesus appeared to John, what happened? He fell on his face. Why?
Because of God's glory.
In other words, I can't look at it, so I'll bury my head in the sand.
Not in that, his presence is, we can't understand it, but his presence is such that nobody with sin can withstand it.
I think there's the key. Sin cannot maintain itself in the presence of the Holy God. When God shows up, sin gets gone. It can't face him. Why? Because God's so mean and destructive and powerful?
No, because it's the opposite of his love.
Yeah. Guilt, maybe? But not guilty enough to want to acknowledge God as Savior, Lord, King? Ernie, you look awfully deep in thought. What's going on between
Well,
those
I'm
ears?
just listening to what everybody's saying.
What was the question?
Okay, yeah, so all he said was, I am he, and the soldiers fall back. It doesn't tell us what really happened after that. Did they just pick themselves up and start over? I mean, how do you deal with that? If you were one of the soldiers, Jesus spoke and said, I am he, you fall to the ground, then what? What?
Didn't that one disciple cut that one person's ear off?
Peter cut off Malchus'
Shortly.
ear.
That's coming up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. With I am, Jesus identified himself as the great I am, and his divinity seems to have looks like there's a V missing, have manifested itself with power, causing the soldiers to fall to the ground. So just what you've been talking about. So then Jesus asked them again, whom are you seeking? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Now the next one, was Jesus just trying to be a bit catty, or what's the deal? I've told you that I am he, therefore if you seek me, let these go their way. I've already told you. What are you asking me again for? What's the deal? I'm going to just redirect this. It's blowing my hair.
Oh,
And it's cold.
maybe he's saying there, well, I told you, I'm the one you're looking for, so let these others go. You don't need them.
Why did they ask him a second time?
Maybe I couldn't believe it. Maybe you would acknowledge it.
Not normal human behavior, would it be?
No.
No, no. I've told you that I am he, therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way, that the saying might be fulfilled which he spoke, of those whom you gave me, I have lost none. What do you take from that? What does that mean?
He's telling his father that those that were willing to, that you gave me, they're steadfast with me.
Those were the apostles.
I'm going to say, who are
Yeah.
those you're talking about?
Yeah,
The apostles.
Not the disciples?
No. The apostles.
Right, we had this discussion in Sabbath school some time back, didn't we? Apostle versus disciple. I think they're the same. The apostles are disciples, but not all disciples are apostles. Okay, we won't rehash that one again. So those whom you have gave me, I have lost none. Meaning that none of his disciples, none of the apostles, none of those people that were associated with him are going to die because of him. Then and there. Yes?
There was a lot that followed him, and then they turned around and left.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I maintain the apostles.
It sounds to me like he's having them twice say
We did.
who are they looking for?
Yes?
And they're saying, now Jesus of Nazareth, and then Jesus is thinking of his disciples, to let them go,
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't.
Yeah, they're gonna cook their own goose.
Like, you want me, not them. Let them go.
Yeah, let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes the world desensitizes us so much, so maybe this was a way of him clarifying, okay, who are you after? And them coming out and saying it, maybe they'll finally realize, or at least some of them will realize. I think of the one start something and then following and they blindly follow. Well, maybe that would pull someone back and say, oh my goodness, they're going to kill Jesus.
It made me wonder if after the resurrection of some of those people that were there and he said, who are you looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. Might they have had a change of heart
Yeah.
and maybe followed him? I mean, we're not given that information, but
Well,
I can
many-
see that as a possibility.
Many did change their,
Yeah, they have, yes.
and accept it.
Yes.
Instead of just weekly following the rebel rousers, maybe hopefully this woke them up. Or even some of the rebel rousers themselves, all of a sudden they'd say, what am I doing?
Right.
There were other followers of Christ than the disciples, because afterwards they chose another one to take Judas' place, and he had been with the disciples for a long time.
Don't you think there were lots of followers of Jesus?
I believe there was.
Absolutely. Otherwise, why would there be crowds?
Oh, exactly. And after he had healed hundreds or thousands of people mentally and physically, wouldn't they want to go back where he is? Or tell others and say, go chase this guy. he can do something for you.
I think at this time, though, he's in the garden assembly with his disciples.
Just his 12 here.
Yeah, and I think that's who he was telling the soldiers and
Mhm.
after to let them go. That you don't have business with them, you have business with me.
Mhm.
So, I don't think there was a crowd of followers.
No,
at
not
that
them,
time.
but we were talking about in general.
Yeah.
Okay, then dutiful Peter. Then Simon Peter, verse 10, having a sword drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his ear. The servant's name was Malchus. In this incident, all Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all name this, but John's the only one that names Peter and Malchus. But John had a penchant for a little detail. So Jesus said to Peter, put up your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? So what did Peter hear Jesus say?
It was his time. Christ,
Do you think Peter really heard that?
maybe not right at that point in time, but I'm sure when he thought about it later, that's what he was, something that that's what was happening.
Yeah, I believe that. But what did Peter think right then? We band together. We're a group.
Did I remember someplace where Jesus healed it there?
Mhm.
Yeah, like that, but it's not mentioned here.
But it's not mentioned.
Not in John.
Not in John.
Would somebody check Matthew, Mark, or Luke and see, because Jesus said, put away your sword and then
Then he healed.
put the ear back. Probably could look at the marginal reference. That was what, verse?
In what gospel did Jesus heal the guy's ear that was cut off?
It's verse 10.
It's found in Luke 22, 50 and 51. It's also found in Luke 22, 50.
Yeah, see, so Dr. Luke put down that little detail. Yeah,
The doctor.
notice that.
Luke is the only one that records that.
Luke, yeah.
Luke 22, 50.
That would be important to Dr. Luke. He's a fixer.
Because like you say, and one of
22,
them struck
15.
the servant of the high priest and cut off
Right,
his ear.
John is the only,
50 and 51.
Luke what?
22,
They don't mention
verse
it,
50
but only
and
John
51.
gives the two.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Because 15 didn't have.
what was that,
Verse
Nancy?
51.
We got distracted.
I said in here, it says, it just says, and one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his
Where's
right
that?
ear.
Luke?
That's Luke, yeah.
Yeah. John's the only one that names who did it.
But Jesus answered and said, permit even this, and he touched his ear and healed him.
There you go. So Jesus said to Peter, put your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? And in the paragraph I have down here, the cup, which is used here as a metaphor for death, also brings to mind the cup of, that's missing a C, the cup of God's wrath that evildoers will have to drink. It is the cup that Jesus would drink for us. It is exactly because he would drink from the cup of God's final wrath against sin that those who accept him can freely and abundantly drink from the living water that he has to offer. But the computer didn't do a very good job of spell checking, did it? Or whoever was looking at it didn't pay much attention to the spell checker is a possibility also.
We get the gist, though.
Okay. Carl, would you read before the high priest for the next, down through verse 14, please?
Then the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. And they led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people.
Are we giving any details on how they bound Jesus? They arrested him and bound him. What did they do? Tie his hands behind his back, put handcuffs on. They bound him. Annas and Caiaphas, isn't that interesting? Annas was the father-in-law, Caiaphas' wife's father. Reading the purple, after his arrest, Jesus had a preliminary hearing before Annas, the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest. This hearing, which is recorded only in John, seems to have had an informal character, perhaps only in deference to Annas' continuing influence. By the way, Annas was the high priest before his son-in-law Caiaphas. And the Jews believed that once you were a high priest, you were always a high priest. You never were totally demoted. From the Andrews Study Bible commentary. Under Roman occupation, the high priesthood became a political office. Annas was appointed high priest in AD 6 by Quirinius, the Roman governor of Syria, and deposed in AD 15 by Valerius Gratus, Pilate's predecessor in Judea. For many years thereafter, however, Annas continued to exert significant influence, not only because his deposition was considered arbitrary among the Jews, who thought that the high priesthood was as a life office, but also because 5 of his sons and Caiaphas, his son-in-law, became high priests at one point or another. There's a missing A. Caiaphas held the office from AD 18 to 36. Ernie, would you please read John 15 through 18?
And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Now that disciple was known as to the high priest, and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her, who kept the door, and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" He said, I am not. Now the servant officer who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself.
Another disciple is mentioned twice. Who was it? Probably John. John never refers to himself as John, the disciple Jesus loved, or another disciple. I guess every time I read this part of the story, I can't help but wonder, why did Peter get such a weak backbone? Yeah, but I'm not Peter.
Now, didn't some versions say he also cursed,
Yes, yes.
which this one doesn't,
Right.
trying to prove he wasn't.
Yes, yes. I use a little foul language, and you know I'm not one of his. So what's with Peter? I mean, come on, he was adamant about taking care of Jesus. He cut off the ear. High priest servant. And he was protecting Jesus. Now he's running scared for his life.
Maybe because he didn't want to go through the same phase as Christ.
Most of us don't either.
That's understandable, but that might be one reason why he did it. I'm not saying that is the reason why, but that is one reason why.
Yeah,
See,
absolutely.
if he was totally scared for his life, though, he would have left.
Wouldn't even gone that far.
He wouldn't have came to begin with, and then he wouldn't have stayed after she said, "Oh, you won." You know, he stayed
Okay.
close by. Yes, he didn't admit it, but it's like,
Curious.
maybe I can still help. Maybe I
Okay.
can still do. I'm afraid to say that I'm one of his disciples, but
I like that. Notice what Nancy does, and Nancy always does it very well. She puts a positive spin on it, even the goofiest people.
Well, like I said, if he'd have been totally scared spitless, he'd have hightailed it out of there, totally.
I think you're right. I had never thought of it like that. Yeah.
The fear of the authorities, the fear of the Jews is the fear of the authorities that were above the common people. And the disciples were all common people. So they had a fear of the authorities coming down on them like they came on Christ.
Right. And the emperors were thought of as gods then. They thought of themselves as gods. So their word was final. So all the emperor had to do was say, get rid of Peter and gone.
And he's got to be pretty shook up, you know, this person that you've been following and you've totally looked up to, all of a sudden.
Watched him do all kinds of miracles.
Watched him do miracles, watched him do all this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden he, you know, went with them kind of like a lamb being led off to slaughter. You know, he didn't, when Peter swiped the ear off, he's like, you know, basically, calm down, Peter, calm down. It'll be okay. And he went off with them.
Yeah, but Peter had just told Jesus in the upper room that, you know, you can't wash my feet. And Jesus said, you won't be a part of me. So look at the great pendulum swing.
Yeah.
That to denying him. And I heard some on Toma this week, somebody was saying that every time Peter, after this incident, when he weeps, you know, he never really got over the fact that he denied before.
So his emotions are all over the place.
He probably heard that cock crow 1,000 times
Yeah.
thereafter.
But I mean, he went from, you know, I'm following this miracle worker, this whatever that way, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, they're leading him off to kill him.
And then wash all of me.
Which again shows that nobody understood the plan of salvation. Jesus tried to explain it, but incomprehensible. Could we understand it if we didn't have the privilege of looking back at history?
And
We,
Do we fully understand?
this is why it says that we will study this throughout eternity.
They couldn't see the forest for the trees because they wanted to get rid of the Romans. That was their
priority.
Oppression.
Master.
main objective, and so they thought by hooking their wagon to a star, Jesus would do that for them. So when he told them all the things he was going to do, it just went over their heads.
You didn't read the right script.
Yeah.
Wasn't really I had it planned.
And Jesus saying, but you really don't understand my mission.
Kind of like a father talking to the children. You know, we don't always understand what our parents tell us when we're young. We don't understand the reasons. Sometimes the parents make decisions, but you look up to them, and they're your leader, they're your whatever, and then all of a sudden, it's a totally different situation. So he was confused, you know, he was loyal, but yet he was scared and
Don't understand what's going on.
doesn't understand. And like Elaine said, I'm sure he suffered many times.
And sometimes, I know from my own experience, you don't actually comprehend what's being said to you until sometimes later on in life when you are able to reflect back on what happened.
Very good point, yes. Going on, Jesus questioned by the high priest. Nancy, would you read that section down to verse 24, please?
The high priest then asked Jesus about his disciples and his doctrine. Even if the interrogation was not an official hearing, the procedure was illegitimate because among the Jews a trial was not to be held at night. Besides, the accused were not expected to incriminate themselves. In other words, no case was to be established until the evidence of the witnesses had been stated.
Okay, just stop there. So the purple is what I put in from the commentaries. But I guess I didn't fully realize that before I wrote that in here. Everything they did, everything the Jews did was wrong. It was out of protocol. Completely.
That was planned by them, because they knew if they didn't get it done that night, chances are they wouldn't.
He might escape.
Well, the Passover was there,
Passover.
and people were
Yeah,
all hoarding there,
they
and
couldn't harm the Passover.
Yeah.
so they knew they had to get it done that night, and they pushed through all those trials, illegal.
Isn't that amazing? You would think somebody would have stopped and said, you can't do this. This it can't be done now. You're asking Jesus to blame himself, accuse himself. You're doing this at night. We don't do any of this. To me, that's just, I never understood that so much
You mean
before.
you couldn't plead the fifth?
Apparently not. Apparently not. I'm sorry, go on.
That's okay, you can go back. Besides, the accused were not expected to incriminate themselves. In other words, no case was to be established until the evidence of the witnesses had been stated and confirmed. Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in temple, where the Jews always meet, and in secret I have said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. And when he said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Do not answer the high priest like that. Jesus answered him, If I had spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? Then Ananias sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest.
Okay, a couple of things. What did Jesus tell him? I've spoken in the temples. I've healed God's opposite people. There's all of these people out here. So why are you asking me? Why didn't you go and talk to all these witnesses?
Yeah, never in secret.
Always in public.
Always in public and in the temple with crowds that have to use a hillside.
Yeah, I'm thinking public.
So why are you talking to me about this now? There's thousands of people you would go ask about this. That wasn't their duty, huh? So the one of the officers thought he was being a little sassy, apparently, huh?
Yeah, he thought he was hot stuff, in charge. And perhaps they themselves had already heard Jesus on the hillsides and such. You don't know.
What do you think this officer ever thought about any time thereafter, about slapping Jesus on the palm of his hand?
I hope he feels remorse.
I hope he was one that had his eyes opened and was converted after that.
Either way, we're
Still.
told that he will see Jesus coming and he'll realize that
He will bow at his knee.
he will bow. Every knee shall bow. Yes. So either way, he will know the result. And we don't know which way he went. And maybe like us, maybe he has some days on and maybe he had some days off. We can tend to be a little inconsistent ourselves. Well, maybe it's only me. Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? What should Jesus have said instead of that?
What could he say?
He's also human here too, still.
Frankly, that was a really stupid question, planned that way, because anything Jesus says is the right thing. Okay?
He didn't lie.
He doesn't lie. Okay, so then they bound him, tied him up somehow, I guess, or strapped him to one of the other soldiers, sent him to Caiaphas. Okay, let's see. Pat, would you read 25 and 26, please?
Now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him, You are not one of his disciples, are you? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter then denied it again, and immediately an usurper.
What's your takeaway from here?
Word traveled fast.
Yeah.
The ear was cut off in the garden. And then a relative at the house already knows that Peter had cut off the guy's ear.
Exactly. I mean,
I never thought of that before.
Not only that, was in the night, right?
Yeah.
getting toward morning. before the
But
cock
still in the
crows, 'cause
dark.
cocks crow
Right, but I'm
early
saying
morning.
it was in the
But-
dark, and
right,
yet
right,
word
but all the
traveled,
word is already
Yeah,
gotten
word
to
was-
this relative.
traveled fast.
Well, no, he says, did I not see you in the garden with him?
Yeah, but one of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him, whose ear was cut off. So, yeah, so the word got around that Jesus had healed the ear that had
And
been
it
cut
was,
off.
it wasn't a 24-hour period.
No.
No, just a few hours,
No, minutes.
minutes.
Again, why is it so easy for Peter to say, no, I was not there? A blatant lie. I couldn't help it but think about kids. You know, when you ask your kids, did you? No, I didn't. I just right out. The immediate reaction is to deny anything that
Cover up,
would accuse yourself.
cover up the night. Scared of the consequences of acknowledging it.
The devil makes it very easy to lie. That's our first defense.
Oh,
It
yeah.
seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then, see verse 26 once again. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off, said, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" Peter then denied again, and immediately the rooster crowed. Happenstance.
Yeah,
Probably not.
so.
You wonder when that rooster crowed, if all of a sudden Peter just jerked like,
I'm sure he remembered what Christ had said.
I think that came to his mind immediately.
Okay, Patty, would you read 28 through 31, please?
In Pilate's court.
Yes.
And then they led Jesus from
Caiaphas,
Caiaphas to the Praetorium,
Praetorium,
the headquarters or official residence of a Roman governor or military commander. The word comes from the Latin
Praetor.
meaning a chief magistrate or commander. And it was early morning, but they themselves did not go into the Praetorium, lest they should be defiled. But that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" How far did you say?
Through 31.
They answered and said to him, "If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you." Then Pilate said to them, "You take him and judge him according to your law."
Okay, a couple of things. Why couldn't they go into the Praetorium? Because it was going to be Passover.
Be unclean. They would be unclean, yeah.
Why? What do you mean unclean? They're just going to go into the Praetorium, the governor's house.
Because he
Because
was
they were
Roman,
Romans.
not Jewish.
They could not go into a Roman's house or have anything to do with it.
Right.
Contaminate you. So when's Passover?
Probably started that morning.
Passover
What day are we talking about? Not right now.
This, I would say Thursday morning.
we're going into Friday.
In the upper room, the servants did not.
Somewhere, Thursday, Friday time frame.
Elaine just made a good point. Their Last Supper in the upper
It
room
was Thursday night.
was Passover supper in the upper room Thursday night. So late Thursday night, early Friday morning, they're on their way and intercepted the Garden of Gethsemane, right?
Already
Okay.
the start of Passover.
I'm sorry?
I said, wasn't that already that day, the start of Passover?
Passover is celebrated for 3 days. And
What, 3 days?
it was the day before the angel passed over. We had to do God's commandment.
Okay, that would be Thursday night.
Thursday night. Then Friday was look at that,
The crucifixion.
crucifixion, and preparing for the Sabbath. And then the Sabbath day would be the Passover.
So Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday would be the Passover services. Right, and Bob mentioned the Passover is from the Egypt. I mean, the Bible is a consistent whole from the beginning to the end. Pilate went out to them. So he was taken to the praetorium. Roman governor was Pilate. And Pilate went out to them and said, what accusation do you have? If he's not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Now, that's kind of a snotty answer, in my opinion.
It's dancing around the truth.
Exactly. I mean, it's, to me, if it weren't so tragic, it'd be almost humorous. I mean, what do you think, we brought him here just for a joke?
Remember, they were mad at him for the things he said, and they felt he was
Kind of God.
many things that offended to God. He upturned their tables at the synagogue, people lost money.
Cast out demons and made swine run into the lake.
Forgave
Yep.
sin.
And forgave sin and healed.
Healed on the Sabbath.
Oh my, yes, yes.
He ate the shoulder too.
Yeah, he ate the show, that's right. He was an evil doer.
Pilate went out to them and said, what accusation do you bring against this man? And they answered, if he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Then Pilate said to them, you take him and judge him according to your law. So that tells me that Pilate immediately recognized there's no really Roman law here that's been broken that I can see. So if you think that he's an evildoer, you judge him by your law. And that tells me that Pilate must have known the difference between Jewish law and Roman law. Right? So Pilate was not a dummy.
Read the rest of 31.
Therefore the Jews said to him, is it not lawful for us? It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying by what death he would die. 33, then Pilate entered the praetorium again. Obviously he went out to think it over. So, the purple part there. The Jews wanted an execution, but capital punishment was a criminal charge that only the Roman governor could legally authorize. From John's perspective, if Jesus was to be lifted up, he would have to be handed over to the Romans. The Jews could not crucify him. They couldn't even kill him. Kind of interesting how that was set up, isn't it? I think God had this all orchestrated from way before the beginning. He had our salvation, he had your salvation, my salvation in mind, long before he ever created the world. That makes you pretty important. Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered him, what? Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. Is that a bunch of double talk, or what did they understand? Did they understand anything at that point in time?
Especially Pilate, he was Roman.
I mean, what if we had been there? What would we have understood? Would we have done anything different than Pilate did?
Probably thought he was crazy.
My kingdom is not of this world. Well, where is it then? Are you a Martian? If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight. Well, didn't your servants do a little fighting? Cut off an ear at least. So that I should not be delivered to the Jews? But now my kingdom is not from here. Pilate therefore said to him, are you a king then? What did Jesus say? somebody forgot to put this last part in red. What did Jesus say? Jesus answered, I guess we need to look that up.
You say rightly
Verse-
that I am a king, for this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice.
Yes, that's the rest of 37. Obviously, whoever cut and pasted missed part of that. And then Jesus answered in verse 38. Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him." So when he asked Jesus, "What is truth?" did he wait for an answer? It doesn't seem by the way the text reads that he did, does it?
Not here, but it seems like one of the other gospels there was an answer. Maybe I'm wrong.
What is truth? Or maybe he was just frustrated by that. So what is truth? And then just marches out. I don't want to hear any more of this. This is all nonsense. And Pilate keeps talking to them. Ken, would you read from 39 to the end, please? The last two verses.
But you have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you therefore want me to release to you the King of the Jews? Then they all cried, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber.
So if you're one of the good saints from the church there, and you wanted a criminal instead of the criminal Jesus, I don't know what I'd think about you. Isn't that just kind of amazing that Jesus had done nothing wrong. They all had witnessed miracle after miracle after miracle. And they wanted him crucified and a blatant criminal let go.
They had such hatred. They were possessed by the devil. They had such hatred. They didn't care.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. They had such hatred. Hatred can't think correctly anytime. That's why, is it James that calls, if you hate your brother, it's like murdering him? Yeah. Hatred is an awful thing. And it will let you do things that in your right mind you wouldn't do. And if you have hate, are you actually in your right mind? Probably not.
No, but we have hatred in our hearts, we don't keep us out of the kingdom.
Yep, exactly. What'd you find, Elaine?
In Luke 23, to answer the question that Pilate said, "Are you a king then?" it says, Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. So I thought there was one that...
Yeah. And of course it would be Dr. Luke.
Nice.
You said it. Yeah, right, well, we knew that he said it.
Yes.
Say that I am.
Exactly.
You answered your own question.
Yes. Amazing. So, the next 3 chapters in one sense, humanly speaking, are probably the most tragic ones in the Bible.
One of the most glorious, because without them we couldn't.
Exactly.
Don't have a prayer.
But the other opposite extreme is that it's the best story ever told. And without it, we don't stand a chance. And, you know, sometimes I would say, why don't all these people that don't believe in God, you would think they would all want to just kill themselves and be done with life. There's nothing more to look forward to, except more of self. And apparently that's sustaining
Why do we call it Good Friday? Because without it, you know, it's good for us. It's
Yeah,
good for
that-
him.
For us, without it, we have a chance.
What were you gonna say, Marcia?
I just say Good Friday, I always think of it as, oh, I need to go to church tomorrow.
Right. Right. Any other thoughts or comments? Good discussion. John is just an incredible apostle. And I have far more appreciation for him than ever before. Nikki, would you give our closing prayer, please? If you're Nikki.
Yes. Dear Father, we come to you and we thank you for this understanding that you've given us today with John 18. And we pray that we'll have even more understanding of John as each and every chapter we go through yet. And we pray this all in your ever wonderful and most holy and saving name, dear Jesus. Amen.
Amen. We're good, thank you. I didn't know it was much cooler down here.
I didn't go. Yeah, I did.
Broken heart, cold heart.
Mm.